Kind of this obsession with perfection, which is funny because it shows up again and again and again in human civilization.
$5,000 camera. But if you do this economy right now and you pick up some used, you get like steals left and right. Welcome to the Infinite Creative Podcast. My name is Fitz, and this
is Sean, and welcome to a podcast about creativity, AI, and a lot of different technologies and things, which we're going to talk about today. But welcome, Fitz. How are you, dude?
I'm doing good. Let's jump right into it because we got some news that we found kind of interesting. Because in AI, there's obviously a big issue of actually, how do you get a copyright on something that you didn't really do? So I kind of want to talk about it. And one of the things that is sparking my interest is this here, because we talked about it on the podcast. Somebody mentioned in an art competition that he used the tool. Nobody really knew what the tool was, so he kind of won the art competition. And all he really did was writing a couple prompts. And yeah, now he's trying to get a copyright on it. And obviously, it's not working out for him.
Yeah. Really interesting, right? That they're in this article, it kind of talks about how, if he kind of argues that, well, I focused on bits and pieces and I did make additions and edits to this, so therefore it is mine. But yeah, they said that no, it's derived from other things clearly, and so that's really interesting, right? That what is the percentage of how much can you change the homework and still call it yours? And yeah, really weird.
Yeah. On that note, though, what do you feel like? Is this fair that you don't get the copyright on it? Because, theoretically speaking, you still did the work, and you still maybe be able to replicate the style with your prompts, and you could develop your own style where it's okay, if I write everything a certain way, I will get a certain style, and not everybody is capable of replicating it because they don't really know the prompts. So, what's your take on that, Sean?
Well, I definitely, talking about those few episodes ago where we were talking about AI competitions and stuff, and what does that even mean, and is there an art to it? So I think we've talked about the art of prompts, right, and how you can be really great at doing prompts versus actually not doing so great at prompts, and but so there is an art to it, there is an effort to it, but I think what is copyright, right? So I think we have to think of what that is, or what is owning something. And I guess it's you can really never copyright an idea. You can only copyright a physical object. And so if you're taking ideas, you're saying in the style of, so you're essentially saying I'm taking the ideas of, then maybe you shouldn't have copyright because you're just using ideas. Then the ideas are ephemeral. You can't copyright Van Gogh's style. You can't copyright a concept. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree with it too, but it's messy though. I think there's a level too where you could probably create something original with AI, and that should be able to be copyrighted.
Yeah. In this article, there was also mentioned, we all use now ChatGPT 3, and we also use Grammarly, and we use, there's all sorts of aspects, where AI is taking over and improving what we say, write, text, whatever. And with that being said, okay, at what percentage is what you said is not actually your words because it got corrected in a way, let's say Grammarly, it corrected a ton of words. Is that even then your email? Is this even your message? Right. And I feel this is a very interesting concept because in a way we want perfect, messages and responses to look professional, but then it's also, is it really our response?
Yeah, exactly. I think there is that. What's scary is, we've talked about this before, where people just don't trust really either. I'm losing trust in stuff, and it's funny because things will start to sound like AI to me. So for example, in copywriting and stuff, when it's always using descriptive words like this robust option is an incredible and amazing, and it's saying things like that, when people oversay that now, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe that was AI, because I've seen that in AI when I've had it write stuff where it's too markety, it's too much, it's too spectacular with confetti.
Yeah.
And I've lost trust now, which sucks, because some people probably do truly remarkable things, and now people are going to think it wasn't them, and I think that's the scariest thing.
Yeah, that's like a big issue. But on that note, I think like you were in like a newsletter of one of our guests, and a couple of things have happened there. Or can you go a little bit into that? Because like we
Well,
talked
yeah.
about Hive3, or
Well, yeah, yeah. So Hype 3 now is Hype 3 is now coming up with coming out with its with newsletters and emails. It started its competitions like he talked about. So now they're kind of they're putting out these kind of new prompts that they want you to meet. So I guess so one of the first like prompts they put out first competitions. I guess this was the winner. So I guess it was a fruitcakes design challenge. And so this was the winner of that challenge that they created with AI. And what I think is interesting here is there's some styles happening here, right? Like we have kind of this product kind of photography style happening. You have all these things, but yeah. So it's funny they're doing that. They're kind of showing some of the kind of other people that were worthy to talk about.
yeah.
Um,
I
so
think
yeah,
like we also should mention like what this actually is because we have to reiterate what Hive3 is and what
yeah.
this
Oh
whole
yeah, good
thing
point.
is.
Yeah, so Hive 3. So we had Andy Sack on a few episodes ago, 4 or 5 episodes ago, where he talked about this AI competition. So Hive 3 is this AI competition where anyone can really join. You can join a waitlist to kind of be part of it. They've now launched a Discord, which I haven't gone into yet, which I think is open to the public. So for people out there, we haven't even quite done this yet. Going to Hive 3. You can join their Discord for free, and they're giving away prizes, which is what's interesting. So they give up cash prizes for kind of doing AI art, and it's just interesting because they're really trying to wrap their head around how do we have people push AI to the limits, and so it's interesting when you look at some of these. I mean, because first off, they're pretty perfect. There's I think things are
Yeah.
edited, and he had kind of talked about that he like a lot of the people are graphic designers and illustrators. So it's interesting when you look at these they look fairly believable that they're AI, but they look fairly believable that they could not be AI too. I would say.
Yeah,
Um,
they're like that is like the weird thing now, when you go up to the top one, this looks like really good, this looks like real berries, this looks like a cake, this looks like frosting on top, and everything looks like a staged photo shoot, and we are at that level where it's like this could be professional photography or this could be professional AI,
mhm.
it could be just also be a professional Photoshop project. It's so good that you just like holy moly, you
Yeah.
can't tell.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of our, in one of our future episodes, we'll need to go through this. But we've actually had people that have sent us AI artists that they like. So if you're watching now, feel free to leave a comment if there's any AI artists that you want to shout out that you do like. What's interesting is we've gotten responses. People out there do have their favorite AI artists and things like that. So I think in a future episode we should go look at them because it's funny that it's like this new territory. So it'd be interesting to see, like, yeah, who's calling themselves an AI artist and who is the best AI artist, I guess.
I mean, this is like going also back to like the whole social media thing. We all are a photographer now. I call myself Tampa Bay photographer or St. Pete photographer, and there's like 20, 50 accounts out there with the same name. And some of them are big, some of them are tiny, and it's like, who is actually an AI, artist? Who is actually a good prompter? And everybody is and everybody is not in a way. And it is really hard to make yourself a name for it. So I think like the Hive3 thing is actually a good way to make yourself a name if you actually win a competition. So you
Oh,
can kind of get like certifications in a way when you win competition. You're a little bit more like a real person if you're out there in the community making yourself a name versus like you just call yourself an entrepreneur.
well, yeah, yeah, and so yeah, so it's interesting. I think we're going to be dealing with this for years. I mean, I think we're probably talking over the next 5 years. You're going to see a lot of this because we're already seeing it get to this scary level where I don't know if you've probably seen a lot of this too, but even scrolling through Instagram now, even people that are like, just taking model photos and stuff, they're running them through AI now. So even people that are taking the real photo are running it through AI, and you can tell because it's just so smooth and perfect, almost looks like an illustration or something.
Yeah.
And that seems to
I,
be more and more common now already.
Yeah, with that being said, like the whole industry is changing, and if you're right now a model, you actually have to get onto this train because like it's not anymore good enough to be just looking pretty because there's agencies out there who have AI models, and that's like basically a two-page of a prompt where they change a couple things and then they have a model actually doing X, Y, and Z, and if you're a model and you're not actually onto AI and you're basically creating your own character, like your own AI model, you kind of will be replaced because all they really do is like copy and paste a prompt and changing a couple things, and now the model is doing X, Y, and Z, and this model looks way more stunning and maybe even more realistic, pretty-ish, in a way than like some of the other girls. And it's scary out there. There's already agencies out there who just have like 5, 7 AI models out there, and they're making sponsored posts with product placement, and they look believable. What is like scary by itself, and
Oh,
you would
yeah.
not know if you don't know how far AI already came.
Yeah, yeah, it's very scary. And yeah, for models out there, I have an interesting thing because what's happening. Well, the Writers Guild now is essentially off strike in California, but I think the Actors Guild is still striking, and I still one of the biggest pain points that came out that a lot of people talked about was that. They wanted to like scan, they wanted to scan you as an actor, pay you for that scan, and then never pay you again and use you in other films going forward as like, so they were going to do that for like back, whatever back people would be, your
Yeah.
secondary actors or whatever. They were going to do that. So, which is kind of crazy to think that they would pay you for your one day of work and then just use you forever without you getting any pay from that. So when I think about models, like I kind of worry about that too, right? That like, hopefully that, if I was a successful model, which I am secretly, then I would,
Only feeds.
yeah, you'll have to dig for that one. But what I would do right now is I would try to get a scan of my own body. I would try to get that almost like it's an NFT in a way. Like maybe
Yeah.
your body is like the last NFT if you really think of it.
I mean, in a way it is, but it's also like kind of like the same thing with voices. We all hear like there was like that one Drake song that was actually not by Drake, and
Yeah.
actually really popped and it was really good. And they come out with like voices. But the funny thing is like you don't really own your voice because there's like 10, 20, 50, 100 people out there with the same voice as you. So
Mhm.
who's to say now just because you have a bigger following on social media it's now your voice.
Yeah.
It's like we all have like the same faces, the same voices, the same characteristics. We're
Yeah.
not anymore unique in a way, what is very sad because if you see it on a spectrum of like 7 billion people or more, you
Mhm.
know there's another Sean out there, and he may be Indian, same voice, same everything,
Mhm.
just speaking a different language, has a little bit different you know ways of talking. So it's like, it doesn't really matter for like the viewer who wants to watch the newest Marvel movie. What
Mhm.
is the background character? Because like you can just plug in anybody in there and it's fine. That could
Mhm.
be even randomly generated. Because like Unreal Engine
Mhm.
5, they already have stuff like that where it's like photorealistic people that are randomly generated, and it's like, oh, this could be, and it's believable.
Well, and let's just talk about something else too. That I think both in Dolly and I actually think in Midjourney as well, they've now put up a block that you won't be able to recreate famous people now. So they're already trying to block the algorithm from being able to do that because obviously it's already being manipulated. Obviously, it's already being used for bad things even, and so they're just seeing that it's that's a runaway train that they kind of had to stop, right? Because guess who has a lot of money? All these actors and people that could definitely band together and sue these companies, sue OpenAI, right? Like, let's say that you're an actor and photos are faked of you doing terrible things or something, and then they're put out online, and then now that's hurt your brand. You could definitely say that you maybe have a lawsuit now, like
Yeah.
OpenAI, you have now hurt my career by taking data, by scraping data off the internet of me and my likeness, and you did not get my permission. So I think it's very interesting
I
that
mean,
even
like, yeah, like OpenAI is interesting because like all they really have is like just a base model of a open source code, that you can download yourself and you can do with that whatever you want, and there's no limitations and restrictions. And if you really do the effort of like getting that source code and you train it yourself, you can do anything with it. Most people
Mhm.
don't go through it. I went a little bit into it and tried to experiment,
Yeah,
but it's kind of scary because like if you do like just a little bit effort, you don't have those limitations that OpenAI have, and you can do Snoop Dogg saying whatever. You can
yeah.
have an image of X, Y, and Z, and you train it yourself. If you do it privately, there's
Yeah.
no repercussions.
Yeah. So, stable diffusion is something that's kind of known around the AI world as a very open source type of way to plug things in, right? And so, as long as you know Python, you can really connect these tools and build your own hodgepodge thing together already.
Yeah.
So very interesting, right? Like it's the whole genie's out of the bottle, and we can't put him back in now. Like it's just here now, and so it's interesting to see how are we dealing with this. One thing I did want to bring up and share is that I this last week there was kind of the Windows big conference, their big event, and they definitely talked about CoPilot, which is this AI that if anyone does any coding and like VS coding, they'll already know about CoPilot, which is mostly been known for just coding, but now they're really rolling it out to be kind of it's going to essentially not plug into the Bing engine, the Microsoft AI engine, but it's going to be essentially the next Siri. They're really trying to make this something that's going to plug into all of your conversations. It's going to be already reading your emails, so you're going to be like it's already going to be able to grab information for you without you going into things. And so it was really interesting. I'm obviously not going to do it justice for anyone. Definitely go watch, their kind of reveal of this. They're going to roll it out slowly over time, but it's interesting because essentially what they're trying to do with Copilot, and the reason it's called Copilot, is that this is going to be something. I don't know if anyone remembers, but you had the little bouncing little paper clip back in the day on Office. That's what this kind of reminds me of. Is the paper clip is now going to be Copilot. It's going to be
Yeah.
this thing that it's plugging into Paint, it's plugging into Photos and things like that, but it's going to be doing a lot of different things. Like, for example, I think one of the use cases is they talked about, hey, can you tell me my habits that I've done in the last week, and it kind of shows like their usage habit, and then they're like, okay, well, can you then set a usage limit on that app for this next week, and then it's done. And it's all these kind of interesting things that kind of opens up your operating system, because I've always talked about that. The weird thing about AI right now is it's prompts. It's this weird, you have to put in text, and so the interface is going to be what's going to change now. I think it's going to be like you're going to see the interface get easier and easier, and it's going to become this thing like Jarvis, where I'm just like, hey Jarvis, do this and this and this, and it's like, okay, cool, looking that up, and I'm like, cool, transfer that over to Midjourney, okay, doing. It's going to be kind of this interesting kind of flow we're going to see, I think, in the next few years. And Apple hasn't even really come out with their AI publicly yet, but I know
Yeah.
that they're working on the same exact thing of like, how do we now put AI into Siri? How do we put AI into the operating system?
I mean, with that being said, like I see a big problem. Like, when you're like driving with Google Maps, and you just rely too much on maps, you have no idea, you don't even remember how to get from A to B, and you become really bad with wayfinding without the app. I feel like we will get to a point where it's like people will be not able to really think and ask questions correctly because like, oh, there's not like five recommendations I could ask, and they will not know how to ask questions in a way because like there are recommendations in the future where it's like, oh yeah, there are good questions that you should ask, and you just click without thinking. I'm like, this sounds interesting. You just click, and you basically become like a brain dead person who's just like running through like the wheel of options, and you just like fall down a path that's predetermined by AI without you actively thinking like, do I really want to know this? Do I really want to ask this? What should I actually ask? And you don't really, go down your own path. It's like kind of like predetermined by option giving in a way.
Yeah, I think it's using it as a crutch versus a tool. I think it gets back to just not overusing it, not going straight to it. So even I was talking to a coding buddy yesterday about Copilot, about that's which essentially the way that Copilot's worked in code has been like, if I write something, it's giving me a suggestion. I press tab, it puts it in. So I could put like a comment that says like, I want a red box that rotates on this web page, and then it'll be like, okay, this, and then I could cycle through it and then press tab, and it'll put in that code, all of these lines of code for me. Which is pretty incredible. But then, there's a lot of talk of like, so obviously don't just do that at the beginning. You need to learn it. You need to know it. You need to
Yeah.
problem solve it. But there's also the argument of like, don't waste people's time now, though. So now it's like, if we're like, we're working together and we can't figure out a problem, there's really no excuse to keep suffering for hours and hours over that problem now. It's like, no, after 30 minutes, we need to stop, put in AI and even see. And I think there is something to that of like, we shouldn't be ashamed to save time, but we definitely should be ashamed if we're not putting in any work and we're not growing still. We're just giving it all
Yeah.
to AI.
I just see now like a lot of problems if like let's say you want to the general public's opinion. you can't really influence that now with an algorithm. Let's say, okay, I want to have X, Y, and Z outcome. I basically just predetermine like the questions that all people will ask, and that will influence their thought pattern.
Mhm.
Like, was this action of X, Y, and Z okay? And I just dropped it as a recommendation in the questions, as an AI model. And now I'm basically shaping the whole population's thought pattern just by recommendations. This is a very powerful tool, what can be really easily abused if you just give like recommendations, because that indirectly influences like thought patterns. We
Yeah.
maybe can make decisions on like, is this actually a good outcome with the options given by AI, but we could also have a completely different direction. But AI is shaping that direction already now, then, because like you don't even get the option of like thinking for yourself, because it's immediately like, let's go this way because this is easy option from AI, and you stop thinking,
Mhm.
and you basically become just like that hamster without any option, and you're just like, okay, let's go down there because it's easy path,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
resistance.
Well, and there is certain AI apps, and I haven't played with them that do. They like automatically caters your schedule, automatically caters things for you, and just yeah, exactly tells you like what's your day going to look like. And that I'm not a fan of because there's so much data that it's not getting. It doesn't get how bad you slept last night, and maybe it will eventually make. Maybe all these things are going to feed into it, right? Your heart rate on your watch is going to feed into the scheduling thing and be like, oh, it looks like you didn't get that much sleep, Fitz. Like we're only going to give you half of the things today to do, or I don't know. Like it may get to that level, but I agree. I don't like the idea of us handing it over, giving the wheel completely to AI because yeah, we're just going to become vegetables. Then we're not going to really be useful, and also it's not going to give us a sense of accomplishment. I think that's the thing that you know.
I mean, it kind of does, because if you get the perfect day by AI, you'll feel like, oh, I had a good day today. I followed the schedule. I did everything that Java or whatever told me to do. And that is kind of a cool concept too, because if you know Star Trek and the Borg or whatever, they all became one thing. And if you follow this train of thought, it's like, oh, AI is determining my schedule. AI is determining what is a good design. AI is telling me whatever. And we all mold into that one personality over time, over a decade. We will become one thing that thinks, oh, this is a cool style. Everybody agrees.
Yeah, I mean that sounds terrible to me. I would hate
Yeah,
that to
so
be
it's
the case.
like, ugh.
Yeah, it's the kind of this obsession with perfection, which is funny because it shows up again and again and again in human civilization that we have this weird obsession with like I want to get to perfect, and with AI, I think it's that same obsession of like yes, AI will help me get to perfect, and yeah, perfect isn't perfect. It's just it's not something that's worthy of talking about. Usually, the things that are worthy of talking about are the things that are crazy and break the rules and break logic even. It's a weird time because I see this weird undervaluedness already creeping in the corners. I see that people already don't value a lot of the thinking behind stuff because they're like, well, I could just put it into AI, and that's what worries me. That's ultimately what worries me is that people don't. There's no, which is good that there's no gatekeeping anymore on information. To learn stuff back 100 years ago, you'd have to do a lot of work and go through gatekeepers to understand stuff. Like they just wouldn't tell you stuff. If you want to be a video guy when videography first started, there was a lot of gatekeeping, including money wise. Like you couldn't just do it. You couldn't just learn it. It wasn't like you could maybe go to the library, but there probably wasn't even a lot of books on stuff. So it's like now it's like we live in this time where people they just undervalue stuff, and I think that's the scariest thing. That's how I could tell a good professional from a bad professional is that they someone that values that you as a person and your thoughts versus someone that's like yeah you're just a machine, right? And
Yeah.
like I could just use AI.
Gosh, this is like a pattern where I'm like, okay, is the future, going down into that uniform style because we all get an influence, especially with free information where you can learn to become a perfect videographer, for example. And we
Yeah.
all know the standard norms and whatever, and you're like, oh, this is a good videographer because he watched all the data and learned all the things.
Hmm.
And now you're like a good videographer. But back in the day, a good videographer was like somebody who taught himself and learned like different styles, and he was unique, and nobody out there knew how he would do X, Y, and Z, and that made him good. And if everybody's doing it right now the same style, we will have like the people who are not following the traditional path and learning all the standard basic rules, maybe breaking the rules, will be like a really good videographer, and that maybe is like oh, everybody likes that one style, and then somebody's completely going against it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I think what's interesting too is we'll just have to see how good people follow AI. AI can give you the map, but maybe you're not good at following it. I think that's the interesting thing too. I think like I've put stuff in AI before where I'm like, how would I do this? And it's like this list of all these things. I'm like, dang, I don't know if I actually can do that. So I think that's a funny thing too, right? Is like AI can't do it for you still though. I mean, it can in terms of visuals and stuff. I think that's what's scary is that's just AI just taking the mouse over and doing it for you. But at least like when you're getting Chat GPT advice and stuff, you have to still do it. You could ask Chat GPT, which I have. I actually enjoy asking Chat GPT just interesting stuff that has nothing to do with creativity, like like for example, diet, exercise. Like telling it I've had like a herniated disc here. Like what are some exercises I should do, and but you still have to do it, right? It can give you the map, but if you don't do the stuff, then it's not going to happen. So there's still going to always have to be this doing part, at least for now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what's scary for creatives is that they're seeing that like, no, I mean, it could be a guy that's not even that creative, and he could just have AI take over the mouse, and how would we
Yeah, that's
know?
yeah. You said something interesting there where I'm like, okay, this is like a basic skill we all need to learn and practice because, like, when you have a problem and you want to solve it with AI, and you can break it down, and AI will break it down for you. And then sometimes when you said, for example, I don't know if I can do that, or I don't know if I know all the things that I need to do to break it down, let's say there's like a special coding, whatever, and you can't do that, but you can do five other things. You can break even the problems that you don't know, break them down with AI. So you basically can break everything down and then
Mhm.
again break it down till a level you can do it. But then you have the problem like being a little bit bigger, but you can master all the little parts of the problem that you can solve the main problem. And that
Mhm.
also removes like all the limitations of like ChatGPT 3, like when they have like
Mhm.
for example like I cannot give you tax advice, and then you
Mhm.
just break it down and it will give you the answers. And if you don't know parts of that, you break it down again, it will give you those answers too. But it's
Mhm.
your job to make sure that you have everything in there, because you could oversee one thing, but you can ask deeper questions and it always will answer what is like really one way of like undoing limitations. It's like
Yeah.
also like if you want to like learn how to make certain chemicals, you can break everything down and then it's available on the internet, but it's a little bit complicated to understand.
Well, and there's something scary happening there that you may not even realize is happening when you're doing that, right? So what you're asking AI to do is consult. Consult for me, and it's like I'm not going to consult for you, but I'll teach you, and
Yeah.
that's actually a very scary thing if you think about it. That's like you going to a lawyer and being like, "I need you to represent me in a case." He's like, "Can't do that, bud. But here's a book on law, and I'll show you a couple things in it, and maybe that's enough." Like
Yeah.
that's kind of how AI really is, and I think it could be scary. That's why they say, don't use it for the law, don't use it for the health stuff. Fully. Like obviously, you can learn things, but yeah, it's really not good for you to assume that you can learn it all or enough or understand it
I
all.
mean, like you could if you go down the route, but how deep you go down? You go
Yeah,
one question down, two questions
you're
down,
gonna spend
three
hours doing
questions?
AI. Yeah, are you gonna
Yeah.
sit there for 5 6 hours learning it with AI? Probably not. I mean, so that's
But
where
if
I'm.
you would do, I personally think like because we kind of differ on that opinion. But if you would go down for 5 hours on the topic, you would be an expert, because you only learn what is relevant for your case. If you ask everything specifically down for it.
Well,
But
yeah. Well, I
everything
mean,
else you don't know,
I'm
you
gonna
know.
use I'm gonna use I don't know where I got this, probably from some old kung fu movie or something, but I think it's maybe a Taoist statement, actually a Confucius statement. But it's like one thing to know something, but it's a whole other thing to understand something. And I think that's the thing with AI is even after the 5 hours, you wouldn't quite understand it. I think you would only maybe know it, but you wouldn't understand it. I could do a whole AI thing on how to be a swordsman, be a ninja, for 5 or 6 hours, but I'm still not a swordsman. You still put a sword in my hands, I still don't understand it. I just know it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing about AI. It's this kind of shallow thinking. It's just like Google. It's just like, you only did the first few results in Google. You didn't go to page 10. You just like, okay, that link,
Yeah,
that
but
link,
but
that link. I'm a
there's the
master.
difference that I kind of feel like is because like there were levels to it. Back in the day, you go into a forum and you learn about a topic in a forum. So that gave you like maybe level one knowledge, and it was
Mhm.
obviously not as good as like, hey, you actually mastered that thing. Then we got into that YouTube era where it's like, oh, you can actually watch how the song is played. You can watch how other people do it. They teach you, and that gives you maybe level four knowledge, you know. And now we have this new level where it's like AI breaks everything down for you, what puts
Mhm.
you in a higher level. It's still obviously not mastery, but if you would go down the effectiveness with AI and learning, you're way better off than like actually like trying to learn it by yourself with just the forum or Google or websites, because it combines the important knowledge, you know? So you don't even get like the filler stuff that you would get for like, oh, now let's read 50 blog posts, you know, and call yourself an expert. No, it's like, no, you're reading the most important things in a condensed time, you know? So how much you have to spend time wise to master something, it's way more condensed. That's what I'm like trying to say. Is so you could get really, really good, really, really fast if you learn it effectively versus like spending the same time on a forum versus or on YouTube, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree and I disagree with that. I think what it does well is it helps organize you at the beginning of the road. I think, like, so if like today you were going to learn a whole new skill, if you started with AI and had to break down that blueprint for you, that map, you're going to save a ton of time. And then, because like, so if you learn something and it breaks it down into kind of subsets, then each of
Yeah.
those subsets, then go find your own YouTube video, find your own forum for is what I would suggest. I think, yeah, I think you're right though. I think that like it's helping us get better quickly, but yet again, you would just have to be careful that you cannot just like lean
Yeah.
100% on it because and assume that you're getting it all. I think there's just so many people that think that AI is giving you everything, and then it's like, no, that's not it. Usually, you have to keep
Yeah.
searching, you have to keep doing other stuff.
Yeah, there's obviously levels to it. I'm just like very, you know, like um I like the ability that it breaks it down in steps to you, you know, like
Hmm.
there's like maybe seven lessons that are important, and then you learn lesson number one, and there's like 20 lessons that you need to learn, you know. And if you're going
Yeah.
down that path and you actually master all those lessons, and you can break them down again and master all those lessons, you know, then you reach like the level of mastery that is only in that one aspect, you know, and that is very powerful. But obviously you're right, the more you
Hmm.
break it down, the more there is to it, you know, and you only learn that with like actually spending the time and doing it. But right now there's masters out there who didn't really break those skills down, you know. You can talk to a doctor and he maybe be a shitty doctor because he did not even, you know, gives you ill advice and you actually gonna die, which is sad but happens, you know, because they're
Yeah,
all
yeah.
just humans, you know. So it's like, ugh, now you can actually reach a new level of mastery with the internet and AI. And I'm like kind of curious what we will get for like masters in the future, who are like people who are
Mhm.
dedicated in one niche and they will learn everything and anything related to it, where people nowadays or back in the day did not even have the tools or the access to all that information, you know.
Mhm.
And now it's like structured out there. You just have to go down that path and spend those hours, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, nobody really, nobody can really say what the future looks like on all of this. I can't say where it's even going to go. Yeah, it's here to stay. I think everybody knows that. I think that it's going to keep growing. It's going to be part of our lives. I think I use it. I mean, it's helping me learn how to code. I've been learning how to do PHP and JavaScript stuff that I haven't done. I've done JavaScript before, but kind of newer JavaScript, and it's helping like quickly, like very quickly.
Yeah.
I'm seeing though, like there's always a fork in the road though of like like I said earlier, where like I could just press tab and move on, but that doesn't teach me anything. It's just like if you keep spelling the same word wrong and you just let autocorrect always correct it, then someday autocorrect's not there, and then someone's gonna be like, "What is that? How you spell atmosphere? Are you kidding me?" Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, so I think it's like that. Like if we lean too much, yeah, we lose our muscles, we lose our ability. So I know that that'll be the one thing I'm going to push on for now, and maybe I'll change
Yeah.
later, but I'm always going to be like, give me the blueprint, but let me do the learning, let me watch the videos, let me, because I think it's all of it. It's just another tool to add to everything else. But I would, yeah, don't forget the forums. Because what I like about forums and blogs, by the way, is the people. There's still community there. You can still ask questions, especially in the developer community. There's so many open source, the fact that I could put a website up in GitHub and like put like, hey, can you like I can actually have problems listed for people to go solve in my code and update my code. That's the
Yeah.
amazing part, you know. I think as long as we don't lose sight of that, that like they're still humans. Ask the humans too. There's humans that still know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and it's all about community. And the good thing with us, for example, is like this is a yin and yang where I'm like, oh yeah, you could rely really heavily on it, but that would be bad. And if you don't rely on it at all, it's also bad, you know? So it's like
Yeah.
having that middle route and using your brain is like you need to exercise it, like you said. But you need to use the tools like to the fullest capabilities, but also use your brain to the fullest capabilities in a way. So it's all
Yeah.
about the balance, I think.
Because yeah, it's just true. It's just historically, if you don't grow with technology, it takes you over. I mean, you know, when the gun was invented, there was whole societies that fell because they didn't have a gun. And so, you know, it's when you think about it, that's what AI is. It's the new gun where it's dangerous, it's scary, but if you don't learn how to use it and you don't learn, it could overtake you. It could just wipe you out if you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
So I think everyone should at least play with it. You know, I don't mean to be scary when I say stuff like that. I think you could still be good without AI, obviously, but you know, you should know about it because it's going to be here. It's going to be part of everyone's flow, I think, in the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah. With that being said, Sean, what else is kicking by you so that we get away from the AI talk? Because we know there's a lot of AI going
It
on.
can go,
Nobody wants
yeah,
to hear it,
right,
but it's
right.
important.
It is important. Well, yeah. So, you know, for me right now, it's been interesting. You know, been starting some new projects again. You know, it's been a very low time in terms of just amount of projects, but it's been great. It's kind of helped me develop a little bit and be able to travel and work on the paintings and stuff. But yeah. So for me, I'm in this kind of place now where it's like, where like you try to be honest with people when you don't know stuff. So there's one project in particular where I don't quite know every part of it. So I've been very good about being transparent about that. But it's also like trying not to scare them away with that, right? Well, I can do enough of the projects, and don't run away just yet. Like I can do most of this. And so yeah, it's been like quickly learning code, which has been really fun because honestly, it's been a couple of years since I've been like had that like anxiety of like, do I actually know how to do this? I better learn how to do this really quickly.
Yeah.
And so, so even getting better at Git and GitHub, I just mentioned that earlier. I've kind of shied away from doing that, the more developer side of stuff. So I've gotten really good at that in the last few weeks, getting into PHP the last few weeks. Like I said, JavaScript, just like learning these codes a little bit better. And just, because I feel like I'm in that world, right? And being a web designer, if you don't know the code, you don't know what's possible with the code, then you don't really design for stuff effectively, and also you don't plan for things. So it's so yeah. So just trying to get a little bit better at stuff. Trying to finish this painting. I told you I think last
Oh
episode about
yeah.
my epiphany on like thickening my paints and stuff. So getting that started, and yeah, I mean I'm excited for that. I'm renting a camera here to take pictures of the paintings up here, a mirrorless camera. I'm just gonna rent it for it's like $120 for a week, and the
Oh.
lens and everything.
Oh.
So I know you're
Yeah.
you're like I could rent it for cheaper than that, but
No, I'm just like it's like at that point it's like yeah, buying versus that's like the thing. It makes sense, but it also it hurts, because if you multiply that times five, you got a new camera, my dude.
oh,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, well, you look at the prices, you pay it, and the 1,500,
yeah,
two grand, or whatever, and you find good deals even. So, but yeah,
yeah.
it's just
I'm
like
all
no.
about that deal life. I'm like,
Mhm.
I just flipped like a camera, that I bought for 1,000, but I got $2,000 worth of gear, and I'm like, tripod $200 came with it, two lenses for
Mhm.
each like 300 ish, plus $1,000 body camera, just because the guy got blind, and I'm like, oh boy. I feel sad for him, but I'm also like, this is nice. I'll take it.
Jeez. Yeah, and your phone obviously hasn't come in yet, so we'll
Oh
need a
yeah,
big
tell me
update
about it.
once your phone comes in. We'll need to know how that's working with your whole flow.
Yeah, like for me, that's like one of the things, like if you want to flip stuff, you need to be like kind of like an expert in a niche, and that's kind of like you cannot make money with flipping if you don't know what's the real value, And there's also like then if you're not an expert, like should you spend $100 to rent a camera and then just run it yourself, or should you just pay somebody $150? That's what I would recommend if you're like go
Hmm.
out there, pay a photographer who's like a beginner. He will get you some good photos. Like when they're passionate about it, they are undervalued. Like you spend on like a guy who's
Hmm.
you could make some good like hey, tell somebody who's a beginner who's very ambitious about it and like has the passion, you get so much more bang for the buck. Even
Yeah,
me, I'm like,
yeah, and I did try. I guess I don't know any young photographers, so just for everyone out there, like I did try. I had three different photographers quote it out. The lowest quote I got was $70 per painting. That was
per
the
painting.
lowest that per painting. So it was going to cost me $550, $600. And I just, which isn't that much really for what it is, but I like just don't have the money, just the budget. It was just like
Yeah,
I'm a big guy that I love paying people. I've gotten you in on projects. I get other people on projects. Like I
yeah,
have no problem paying other people, but I'm just in that point in my career where it's been a slow 3 months. I'm just kind of like really at a money tough place, which I think a lot of people are. Which, by the way, I
yeah.
wanted to bring this up. Yesterday, there's a big TikTok trend where I saw where they're talking about a silent depression. Have you heard that term yet?
Silent depression.
That we're in a
No.
silent depression right now. That
Sean, you want to tell us something?
Yeah. So for anyone out there, I've been quietly depressed. No, I'm just joking. It's so essentially. So there's been these TikTok videos where a lot of them are kind of showing, because a lot of people are like, no, times are better now than they were in the depression. Like, and they are in a lot of different ways. The depression era, our quality of life has gone way up. However, when you look at the numbers, right, how much did a car cost back then versus now, and a house versus now, and you adjust it with inflation and you just look at the percentages of how much of your wealth goes to each of these things, it's insane compared to where it used to be. Where like,
Yeah,
you could pay for a car in about six paychecks, where now like that's like we're talking 2 years for most people. There's three things now that most people have that they're in debt with, and that's a car, and that's a home, and that's a phone, even in a lot of cases. And we have like thousands of dollars of phones that we're like paying off on a monthly
yeah.
basis. So they're talking about how there's really no money, even if there's less unemployment than there ever was. That it's deceiving that like that money doesn't go. So I know a lot of people in my life that are struggling. I don't know if you do as well, but like that kind of could
I
feel that
mean,
it feels a little bit weird right now.
I feel
Economy
both
wise.
sides in a way because like I think like I have been the richest and poorest at the same time I have ever been, like in some ways I'm very fortunate, and I'm like, oh yeah, I make now more money than I did before, like
Hmm.
with the freelance income wise and everything. But it's also like just because like some people are doing really well now, and and some people doing really really bad, but the average I feel like is worse in a way.
Hmm.
But it's not like that everything is bad. So it's really hard for me to tell now, is it me doing bad or is it like my, there's like different circles. There's like the
Right.
freelance circle, there's like the serving industry, there's like, all those bubbles. And each of
Mhm.
that bubble has like a certain amount of population and size. And
Mhm.
depending on which bubble you are, this bubble does well or bad. There's people having the time of their life right now because like if you, for example, have like a mortgage that is really low
Yeah.
and you basically don't have to pay a lot in rent, and that's perfect, and now everybody's making more, even though it's like on average worse. You can be having like the time of your life, but it's really depending what are the options and conditions that you live in. Car
Mhm.
breaks down, you have to buy a new car payment. Hmm, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, the only I kind of agree with it only in the sense that with kind of these TikTok videos talking about the silent depression, just because inflation does feel out of control. I will say that like it seems like everything costs so much money now. I mean, even to go to the grocery store, there's almost no way to make that an incredibly cheap thing unless you really are meal prepping. You almost have to meal prep now to keep things under $100 for grocery stores, and so it's interesting. I just feel like everything is more expensive. Gas is more expensive. Everything's just going up kind of fast. It seems like faster than it used to, I guess. And I think that's where the fear comes from with a lot of people, that they get a raise, but then the costs are overcoming that raise. Even I think that's the scary part. Yeah, for us
Yeah.
in the freelance world, you're right though. It's its own bubble, right? We kind of live in a dangerous bubble anyway. Even when the economy's good, we're kind of already used to
Yeah.
kind of crazy. But
Yeah, with
yeah.
that being said, though, I feel like there's like that TikTok trend, with the silent depression. We're in an active depression. Bad news sells well, and it's like reaffirming, like, oh, I'm doing bad, so everybody must be doing bad. And it's just like really depending on what circle you are in a way, And I'm not saying like, hey, you're doing bad because your mindset is bad.
Yeah.
That's not the thing that I'm trying to say. It's just like it's really hard to say, because like I learned from myself, like I made now more money, but also like make less money in a way because like now it's only me working versus like two people working. And it's
Mhm.
tough to say, but I'm also like I'm where you're like, oh, it's really bad, and I'm like, oh, it's really good, But I'm just like, am I now just better or better than before, or is it like, I don't know.
Well,
It's really hard to say.
yeah, I mean, I think it's more like then it's a question of how much of your money are you keeping when the going's good, I guess. That's what's going to tell you. If the going's good, but you still have no money, it's somehow all going back out the door. That tells me, yeah, the economy
Yeah.
may not be good. You maybe all your money's still going out, and I don't know. It's hard to say. One thing I also want to point out: a lot of these videos were young people.
Yeah.
Definitely people that are younger than us, and they had a good point. Some of them where they said it's a lot harder to break into careers now, and I've heard that with like developers and stuff too. Where like to be an entry level developer, they want everything. They want you to know all the code languages. It's everything's more intense now. And after the pandemic, we had so many people decide they don't want to be servers. They don't want to be grocery. They want to be developers. They want to be videographers. They want to do these things. They have friends like us that they know, and then like, oh, well, I want to do it too. And so there's like been, I feel like there's been this huge push into these kind of creative freelance places too. We have a lot of people trying to do these jobs now.
Yeah, with like, let's say, this generation in general, because through social media, we think like that could be like now misunderstood, but it is like really easy to like, I deserve a new car, or I deserve this and this camera. I know a lot of videographers who have like one main camera, and that's the best camera that they can afford, and they really cannot afford that $3,000, $5,000 camera. But if you do this economy right now, and you pick up stuff used, you get like steals left and right. Like, do I deserve the newest camera? No, I just buy the best deal for the best budget, and cameras are really cheap right now. And you could say the completely opposite. If you think you deserve the best camera right now, you spend $4,000. It's not really that good, but if you think like, oh yeah, I can pick up a really good camera right now for $500, man, things are cheap right now, and it's really how you see how you spend your money and how the economy goes, because you can see it both ways. And right now everybody's like thinking they deserve and should buy the newest thing, and they shouldn't buy used. If you buy used, it's really good right now. You can get some really good deals because the economy is kind of doing bad. And if you just make standard money, you can get a lot of nice stuff, like, yeah. So
Yeah.
that is like the thing, but it's really like, do you buy new? What are your buying habits? Because like right now everything is inflation. You're right, the new stuff is really expensive, but the old stuff is really cheap right now. And you still can get access to all the stuff just for cheaper. What is like, if you can wrap your mind around that, and it's like, yeah, it is actually not really that bad, but it's like most people don't, because they want the newest of the new. you
Well, I
know
think so. I think so. I think it's also, because you're talking a lot about gear, but it's other stuff too. It's rent, right? And not all people are
True.
lucky. Not all people were able to get a house for cheap when times are good, and a lot of people, so it's like, and I feel for him. Like when I was a kid coming out of high school, if I was to like be doing that right now, it would be even harder than it was back then. I feel like to survive, and I barely survived throughout college with all these jobs and
Yeah.
things to just barely get by in Denver. And I just don't know how I could even do that nowadays. When I look at like what's the average rent in like Denver now, it's like what the heck to like live in like a tiny box. It's like $1,400, $1,500. I paid
Oh,
$700 for a huge apartment when I moved up there.
there was a case in California with a landlord. He lived in his like Sprinter van, because one of his tenants moved into his house, and the rent is $5,000. So he owed the landlord like 30 grand. This is a couple months worth of money, but 30 grand in rent. If you think about that number, that is so tremendous. What the tenant did though, on the other hand, is like he did not pay a cent, and because there's like laws preventing like him getting kicked out, he's basically living there rent free, owing a 30K, debt, whatever. But he's also Airbnb $400 a night for that thing where he does not pay money. And the landlord agreed in the beginning to subleasing. So that tenant is making money while owing a shit ton of money. And the landlord is with a Sprinter van, living in a van in front of that house, and is upset, and he cannot do anything because it's California. So
Yeah. Well,
there's like those extremes where it's just like,
and I hate that. I hate hearing those stories because you just hear about people manipulating the system and just manipulating people, and I hate
yeah.
that. I hate that. I mean, yeah,
So I can see the inflation part, with 30 grand for a house. Is it right? Is it wrong? yes and no at the same time, and it's just like things are
Yeah.
getting more and more expensive. But I kind of try
Mhm.
to see everything of like, okay, if I want, for example, in regards of like, the technology is becoming ratable available,
Mhm.
can you now record for cheap 4K video? Absolutely, Can you buy now a 4K camera that's top of the line for $3,000? You can buy and spend that money, but you also could spend the same amount of money and get like 5 cameras, 7 cameras, But yeah, it's like, do you get exactly the same thing as you would get 30 years ago, top of the line for that amount of
Mhm.
money? Yeah, inflation is there, but there's ways around it. So you have to be smart, and if you're not, it will
Mhm.
be extra difficult in a way, and you have to be
Yeah.
flexible.
Well, and it's about doing every, especially in America, everybody loves the idea of I'll buy it now and I'll pay for it over the next few years. But if you can flip that, like, if you want a cool car in a year, put money in an account today every month, $100, $200, especially if times are good. If you're getting, like, that's the one thing I see with a lot of creatives is they get like really excited when they get a big influx of money. Like, man, I just got my first $8,000 month. I'm gonna go buy a computer right now. I'm gonna go buy a camera right now. And it's like, you should really put brand of that away, like
Yeah.
into an account, or like, and if you want something, yeah, save it up. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I see right now is that that a lot of us tend to like to get into debt. We tend to like to do the payments thing. There's payment plans for almost anything. You can spend $1,000 on Ticketmaster for Taylor Swift tickets, and they'll put you on a payment plan to pay $100 every month for that. And I think that's the trap.
Oh,
Is like, ooh, because like if you've ever been in debt, which I'm definitely in debt now, even of like, it grows. It's hard to get out of, and it's this crazy wave that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think, yeah. So for any creatives out there that you don't have the MacBook Pro, or you don't have the camera or something, definitely take Fitz's advice of like, yeah, keep your eye out on the cheap stuff. So for example, the new iPhone's coming out. Now's when you need to be looking out iPhone resellers, because guess what? Everyone's swapping their iPhones. That's when you get a cheap iPhone,
yeah.
And so, doing that type of stuff, super, super good, but also put the money away and save ahead of time. The debt and the interest, that does kill you over time. So, even if you want to go to school, you want to go to art school, you want to go to design school, totally possible. Just plan it for next year. Until then, hustle at it as a side gig and get that money saved up. I know people that paid for college before, by doing the unsexy stuff, by delaying 2 or 3 years, saving up money, then going, and they're doing amazing now because they don't have student debt now. They don't have all this
Yeah.
debt that affects them
I
decades
mean,
later.
that is like right now, like if you're smart with money, this is a very easy time to get rich. Like that's usually how it is, Like where other people, I hate saying it, because some people do that. When I was a server, I had a girl coming out of jail, and she just got her life back together, and she's just like, I'm gonna work 40 hours and let's get
Yeah.
some overtime. And I'm like, I got a new apartment, but the apartment is now 3K and they need like multiple months of rent. She saved all that money
Mhm.
and now she bought a car, $500 car payment. The rent is too expensive, and none of that stuff had to be, So she could have
Mhm.
lived as a roommate. She could have not bought a new car because she's downtown, And I'm like, you basically just made your life with bad decisions 10 times worse than it was
Yeah.
before. And like, if you would have been smart and and just like being flexible, the more flexible you are right now and do smart decisions, like get a used car, don't make car payments no matter what. Ride an Uber. You can ride
Mhm.
an Uber 30 times a month, and it will be still cheaper than the car payment with insurance and whatever. And you get
Yeah.
from A to B, or do the bike. The more flexible you are, right now, the more money you will save, and that money
Mhm.
will like compound 10 times versus like you living comfortable because like
Mhm.
the gap that this will create is like tremendous, and it's like it's very unsexy, doing the meal prep. But if you do versus going out eating, you will have
Mhm.
so much more money to invest in like cheap stuff that is undervalued because like the deals that I get on cameras completely undervalued, and I'm just like, what is going on? People don't see what's going on, and they're just like, oh yeah, they have the good times mentality, but if you have a tough times mentality, your deals getting amplified by like a lot, which is crazy.
Well, and another reason why you should have money saved away, right? Because if you're credit high, cash poor, you can't buy the used stuff a lot of time because people want cash. People aren't going to take a credit card when you go buy their used camera from them. So
Yeah,
so another reason of like have an account with $5,000 sitting in it. So when you have a deal walk across your path, because as you know, that's the best deals is they just pop up and you have to grab them then. You have like no time. Like you're like, oh my god, it's like a Canon R5 for like $150 because they don't know what the heck they're selling. Like this is gonna go
yeah,
in the next hour. Like I need to have the money right now, not yet, not tomorrow.
yeah.
So
Or
I
trade, you know? That's
yeah.
also like a thing. Like, I hate, like, I don't want to bash, like, you know, because like you're obviously right. There is a depression going on, and it's tough times right now. But if you're prepared for it, it's easy sailing because the majority of people, they are like kind of blinded by social media and expectations, and
Mhm.
they don't know that, you know, you could get an iPhone that is a 10, you know, iPhone 10, and you could replace your laptop. You can replace everything with it, even cameras. You know, you don't
Yeah.
even need a professional camera. You need so much less, you know, to get the same work done.
Hmm.
But people don't do that. They're just like, we're highly inefficient right now. Like, I have 5 cameras. There's
Hmm.
people in Africa having 1 camera and they're doing more content than I am. And it's literally like that. And I'm just like, oh yeah, if you just like can wrap your mind around like the efficiency and how inefficient we are,
Hmm.
and you find those like those differences and you save it and you actually make those differences worth it, you
Hmm.
make so much money. But obviously it's easier said than done, you know, because
Yeah.
nobody wants to bike into work when you could have a car payment for
Yeah.
$500 and you write a really nice one and everybody thinks you're rich or you're not, you know. It's just
Mhm.
like oof.
Yeah, and I mean the only other thing I would add to that is, and it's maybe a good thing to chat GPT yourself, people out there, is there's lots of things in the community that are designed to help you. You know, yeah, you got food bank, you got things like that, you have food stamps, you
Yeah,
have things like that, but there's grants. Like I've always talked about on here, like look into the creative grants. You'd be surprised like what's available in your state,
yeah,
even locally, especially if you lived in a impoverished area. You'd be surprised. There's sometimes federal creative grants that will help you, and small business grants. For example, if you're in Colorado, OEdit, which is kind of the economic development department of Colorado, they'll pay businesses, $1,500 to create a website, for example. So if you're out there and you need a website in Colorado, you may be able to get a grant for $1,500 so you can hire someone like me to get a good website. And
yeah,
so, it's just knowing these things. And so you got to be a little bit creative, right? I think it comes back to that too. Use the creativity even for your own survival.
yeah,
That's how
definitely.
I've kept going is I've had to be creative. Like you had to be creative. Like, yeah, well, why don't I sell gear? Why don't I do this kind of thing to
Yeah.
help stuff, and even we haven't talked about them in a long time, but your lens stands, I mean, that's, while that doesn't like necessarily, you still get $20 here, $30, $40. You get, which helps. Money just sliding in under the door for doing very little effort. That's great. That's what, so we,
Yeah,
we all need to do that. My paintings, it's the same thing. I wanted that. So when I'm going to pay money for this camera, but it's only because it's an investment. It's worth it to me because like, then if I sell, I think all I have to do is sell 4 prints and I pay the camera. So,
yeah. So here's the thing though, like on that note, like I know a buddy, one of my new friends, he's like working in IT, he's buying the newest iPhone, he was buying the newest camera, then he flips it and buys the newest next whatever, you know,
mhm,
and he has that $1,600 3D print, you know, and I have a 3D printer that's $200 and paid itself like 7 times, 8 times
mhm.
its price, you know, and I'm like, I wish I could upgrade, but I'm too cheap for it. And I really like the idea of like, I have a $200 printer, you know, selling things for $20, $30 or
Yeah.
$60 sometimes, but he's not selling anything, but he's buying the newest thing, you know,
Yeah, because a lot of that's
where
just
it's
in your
like,
mind. Yeah, it's just all in your mind. It's like I have something new, so it's better, and I feel better about it. Where it's like, so this MacBook Pro that right now we've made this podcast on. How many podcasts have I made on this? How much value have this podcast been? And just let's say I just use this MacBook Pro right now, just for this, it's already paid for itself, and I got this used too. I got it like it was like 3 years old when I bought it, so it's like
yeah,
I have that
that's
same
good
thought.
bang for the buck.
Yeah, yeah, and and I look at that way too. That like when I bought my Apple Studio, which was the first brand new Apple I ever bought because you had to get it built. That was my first time doing that, and but for me, it's like those things are investments, just like the camera for my paintings. It's an investment. So I'd also tell people that too. Don't cling on to your money too if it means that this thing could lead to more money. Like, you do have to be a little risky in your investments, right? Like you know that, Ver, you have to
Yeah,
put in $1,000 on a camera, but you then have to tell yourself, I'm going to make that money back. It's only going to take one, maybe two shoots, and it's already paid for itself. And so as long as you think that
yeah.
way, it's not so bad. Think of things not as costs, but as investments.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I learned when I came to the US is basically like how to value things. And like when I came to the US, and like we drive different cars here. There's different bike models, and we all know the name brand and we assume values to those brands. But
Hmm.
after you realize like they all just like a cheap Chinese alu frame that is the same one with a different sticker on it, and there's just a company putting a
Hmm.
sticker on it, that changes everything. So
Hmm.
the value is not the value that you think it is. So it's usually like I price things completely differently of the basically the functionality and the whatever ish value. And brands don't matter in a way. It's just like what you do with it. Like for example, you can buy a bike for $50 and you can drive to work 10 times or 50 times or half a year. And
Hmm.
this bike will make you like several $100s because you save on gas, insurance, all that stuff. And should you value that price if you sell this bike for $50? Hell no. It's worth $200 at least. So it's
Hmm.
like you can value things completely different and see them completely different. And you have to be aware of like we all have our goggles on and you have to question them. Is this thing really worth that price? And do I really need this? Because we don't question ourselves. We think we need and deserve certain things, but we actually don't. And like I was like, I'm doing weddings and everything, and I'm like doing podcasts, the tripods that you saw,
Hmm.
$20 tripods, plastic,
Hmm.
where other videographers like, oh yeah, I have a $300 tripod, all that thing does is like holding a camera up. Now I upgraded my tripods for $50 and they're pretty nice now,
Yeah.
but I saved so much money, and that's like wasted money that other people would spend because they think they need it to be professional, but do they really need that? Hell no, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, exactly. Especially if it's a bandage for doing work. Your work is going to show no matter what it is. I mean,
Yeah,
you could have a crappy camera, a great camera, but if you haven't put in the work, it's going to show. And so I think a lot of
yeah,
people do that too. They're like, I'm going to be a professional videographer, so if I buy a $3,000, $4,000 Sony, I'm now a videographer. No, that doesn't. No, you need to take videos. And honestly, God, I designed for 3 years throughout school before I even had my first Apple.
yeah,
I was sitting in the computer lab in high school and borrowing people's stuff in college, and having to stay all night at the college the first year because I didn't have my own Apple. Because you sometimes it's good to grind it out, and it's good when you grind it out because guess what? I've never lost one of my laptops. I've never broken them. I treat these things like my babies because I remember a
yeah.
time without it.
But I think like this is like one of those things where you also can think outside of the box. You can connect a keyboard and a mouse to your iPhone and Android, and you can have a desktop environment on them. People don't really know about it, but if you're poor, you know about it, and you can probably code on
Yeah.
that. You don't even need a
Our
MacBook,
old
to be
tablets,
quite
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
It's like I see people now like on TikTok, this is my Call of Duty setup, and they're having the new iPhone via USB connected to it, and that was like 4 5 years ago on the Samsung Galaxy S. I don't even know anymore, but I had like a USB connector and could connect my mouse to it, and you have the whole environment available, like that. You have a desktop environment, and can stream to your
Yeah.
desktop.
Mhm.
To your TV, and you get like a whole desktop thing. You don't need a MacBook. If you're willing to go the extra mile, there's opportunities out there, and they
Yeah.
will work just as fine. They're just like less convenient. That's the only
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, be scrappy. Just be scrappy. I mean,
Yeah,
I think some of the best people I've seen have they've been very, very just very, very good at just like, I'll make it work. I'm going to figure it out. And I think that's what it takes. So, but yeah, it's been a good podcast, man. I think we kind of, we went around a lot of different things, right? There's lots of
yeah,
AI. We have a silent depression, but I think it's all positive in terms of like, we can still survive in all this, right? Just be scrappy and be honest as well. That's a
yeah,
big thing too, is like get people to trust you. I mean, that's my biggest thing. Even joining these new teams, it's about like getting them to trust trust me at every point in it. When they say,
Yeah.
can you do that? I'm like, you know what? To be honest, I maybe can't do that, but I can learn that, or I can do this, or, so be that trust, because we have a lot of, everyone's having some weird money thing. Everyone's dealing with the fact of
Yeah.
AI and technology and what does that mean for their career. So what can you do? Get them to trust you. Have your identity. Have them know you as the creative, and that they can trust you as the creative. And I think it doesn't matter the tools. Then doesn't matter what the economy looks like. You'll get fed as long as people identify you as someone that they can trust to do something for them.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing is also like do yourself a favor, audit yourself, and see yourself as a business. Because like if you run a business and the numbers don't make sense, don't make the deal. Does
Yeah.
not make sense, don't do it. Because like there's opportunity, undervalued, overvalued, and if you don't really look for that or question it, you just buy and do things that you shouldn't do, and it's like the couch
Mhm.
back there, free, undervalued. Why wouldn't I take it? We all know that we go on a walk or see something, thinking like something is undervalued. It's like you maybe should take it and flip it because there's Facebook Market, there's free stuff out there, there's opportunity, but it's work.
Mhm.
And if you determine the value, the work that you have to put in, and if it's a surplus, just do it. Oh, and vice
Yeah,
versa,
yeah.
do it not.
That's yeah, amazingly said. And the only thing I would add to that is advice that you've given even early on in this podcast of don't let good be the enemy of perfect too in the process. You
Yeah.
don't have to have the newest thing. You don't have to do the perfect flow. You can do something imperfect now. You can use an old bootleg version of Photoshop and you'll still get almost all the way to what a current version of Photoshop would do. So it doesn't have to be perfect. The up and up is never perfect. So yeah,
Yeah.
for anyone out there, like it doesn't have to be perfect. But well, thanks, man. Thanks, everybody. Like and subscribe. Follow us. We got some other cool stuff coming. And
Oh
yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. With that being said, have a good one, guys.
Have a good one. See you guys.